Only when I have ceased to breathe will I be dead.
I have led the entire human race to ruin.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Get to the chopper!
You have been a good boy. Have a lollipop.
That was the speech. It was dumb. It was obvious. It was pointless. It was short. I loved it.
Welcome to Film Logic, a movie podcast about the movies of the past, present, future, with all the fandoms in between. I am one of the hosts, Mike, and I'm with another host who's somewhere.
I'm over here.
You're over there. Oh.
I'm here. Hi.
Yep, I just looked in the corner of my attic. There he is.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I'm hiding in the shadows because, as we in the Northeast know, it's spooky season.
Yeah, we don't do things virtual.
Mm-mm.
We have to be in the same room.
Right, whether physically or across the spiritual realm.
Yes. Actually, that is a lie. In fact, I did 50 episodes with Adam, and then when we actually saw each other IRL, I couldn't believe his hair was like 4 feet long.
Yeah, I have been growing my hair out. It's almost been a year. It's about time for me. It's almost long enough to donate it. So I think at some point before it gets too cold, I'm gonna braid it up, cut it, and donate it. So
Yes.
it's getting pretty long.
You did like the opposite of what Lex Luger did. His hair got
Exactly.
smaller as he progressed.
Right.
Yes.
Oh man.
Well, anyways, this is
Anyways.
our movie podcast. We're part of the Retro Logic Network, and we're not just a bunch of podcasts, though we do have some amazing podcasts about retro games and retro music and things you can play on Twitch. But we're also a Discord full of great gals and great guys just talking about fun Nintendo, fun Atari, fun PlayStation things.
Mm-hmm.
And us.
Yeah.
We talk about movies.
Yeah, we talk about movies. Yeah, pretty much anything that you can geek out about, we'd love to talk about it.
Yeah. Even dinosaurs.
Oh yeah, baby.
Yes. Well, anyways, speaking of dinosaurs, Adam, have you seen any good movies?
What a transition. Yeah, Mike, so I know that, I don't know, maybe had to be half a dozen episodes or so ago in the past. We somebody was talking about Mission Impossible, I believe, and I think I said that I had vague memories of seeing the John Woo version. I think it's the second one.
Yeah.
But I hadn't seen almost any of the other ones. So I was surfing on Netflix and I saw that the first ones, I think Mission Impossible 1 through Ghost Protocol were on Netflix. So I was like, perfect, I know what I'm gonna watch for a week. So I made my way through those movies, and Mike, I have a lot of thoughts. But first, I want to ask you, Mike, are you a fan of the series? Have you seen them?
Well, I saw the first one. I saw bits of the second one. And then the third one, I was a fanboy over because Philip Seymour Hoffman's a Rochester native.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I had to love him by law. And yeah, pretty much that was it. No, I was getting Ghost Protocol I saw.
Okay.
That's the one where he fights a garage.
Yeah.
And then I skipped Rogue Nation and went straight for Fallout. And then Fallout was amazing, but I didn't understand the plot at all. So I said, this isn't why I see movies. I see movies to escape, not to learn. So I said, you're grounded. Mission Impossible.
You're grounded in Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're, these movies are interesting because it feels like there's it kind of comes in waves and of like quality. Like the movies, the first couple are okay. They're fine. They're just fine. The second one is very like early 2000s actiony movie, and it makes sense that it's directed by John Woo. The first
Yeah.
one is very unlike any of the other ones because it's directed by Brian De Palma, who did movies like Carrie and Dress to Kill and The Untouchables. And that the first one is very like almost like a psychological horror movie.
Yeah.
Um, where you can't really trust their narrator. You don't know, is Tom Cruise? Can you trust him? Can you not? And then, Mission Impossible 3 heralds J.J. Abrams' entry into the series, and that one is very actiony, of course, because it's J.J. Abrams, but it's also like the first one to get, really good reviews. By really good reviews, I mean it's like a 70. And
Yeah.
then Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation are probably the most well received out of the series. They got good ratings, but yeah, I really just want to talk about the rise and maybe the fall of these like ensemble action flicks. But I think unlike the Fast and the Furious movies where they have hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars put into
Yeah.
them. Like these movies, they didn't have that much money into them. It's like around the $130 million mark, and half of that budget's going to Tom Cruise. But
Of course.
um, but yeah, it really doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of movies that are coming out like that. They're either mega budget action films, um,
Yeah.
or they're like, because when I think Mission Impossible, you think like high concept, like outlandish plots, right? You
Yeah.
know, they have to break into the Pentagon or whatever, the Kremlin, what have you, and there's people that are stealing faces. There are
Right.
you know, uh, cool sunglasses that can track people. You got Tom Cruise jumping out of planes, buildings, what have you. Um, and there are some movies that achieve that, right? Like you have the Expendables, you have the Fast and the Furious movies, or you have John Wick. Um, but then you don't have movies that necessarily have, um, especially the later ones. They kind of have a like a realness to them. It feels it doesn't like it takes itself serious enough. Like it knows
Yeah.
that it's ridiculous, but it's like it takes itself real and it works on this own kind of eternal logic. Whereas other movies like The Expendables or the Fast and Furious, they kind of lean into being ridiculous.
Right.
Um, and all the while, these movies are pumping out at like $150 million, and it doesn't really feel like there's a market for that right now. Like I don't know the last time. Maybe it was like the John Wick 4. I mean, I think it had a budget around there, but I can't really think of too many kind of action movies that are filling that kind of niche.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you what it felt like when
Mm.
the first Mission Impossible came out. Like that one was so cerebral. Like action scenes were like an afterthought. And I really think that director was trying to say, or the producers were saying, 007, you're about the corny British action. Well, here's what the Americans can do.
Right.
We do like the smart, cerebral, like who can you trust, the
Mm.
Taylor Dinker soldier spy type stuff.
Right. Right.
And uh, you know, I don't know how that movie did, but I do know that the next 007 movie that came out did kind of bump up the difficulty of their plot just a teensy bit. So
Right.
maybe
Just a little bit.
there's a little, like not that you couldn't understand it, but they at least they tried. And
Right.
so, and then there was a rumor going around that if your movie wasn't crazy explosion shotgun massive mountain fallings, then you weren't going to make money. And so we got number two
Right. With John
and
Woo.
with John Woo, and then number three tried to bring the class back with Philip Seymour Hoffman, and that
Was that 3? Yeah. Was
yeah,
that 3? Was that 4? I can't remember. 3. It
yeah,
was 3. 4 was when
that,
they blew up the Kremlin.
yeah. There was like no buildings to climb.
Mm.
Well, there was one. There was one building to parachute into.
Right,
I
right.
mean, the
Yeah,
movie.
he
Yeah,
parachutes out of or something. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. He does like a pendulum thing, and then the fourth one, I think they doubled down. They like doubled the buildings he climbs, doubled the
Yeah,
face masks.
yeah.
And so, like, I just see a series like desperately trying to find, like its balance. Like, do we want to
Mm,
go super smart? Do we want to go like dumb violence? Do we
right,
need more face masks? Do we need more mountains? Do we need more buildings?
right, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I mean, I definitely see Mission Impossible 1 as almost the blueprint for a lot of those action movies that we got in the early 2000s into like the 2010s. You
yeah,
could definitely see its influence on things like the Born Identity, movies like the fresher retakes of the Bond movies,
yeah,
um, the Manchurian Candidate, like these psychological kind of action thrillers,
right.
um, and even like the some of the humor and stuff that happens in those movies. You see kind of being copied. It's very like an early prototype for quote unquote the Marvel formula. Um, there's a bit in the second one, where the bad guy in it, he is like within their secret agent organization, he has a habit of going on missions and impersonating Ethan Hunt or whatever. And when he has him captured or whatever, he's like, "Oh, I always hated impersonating you because you always had a that dumb smile on your face. You always had something smart to say." Or stuff like that. Like, Ethan, especially in the first two, would always
Yeah,
just crack a joke at a tense moment, and you're like, wow, Marvel formula.
right. Like the third one,
Mm,
they tried to crack a joke
right.
where he had like X amount of bullets left, and
Oh
the
yeah.
the damsel in distress, whoever that was, his agent friend was like, "How do you know you can take them? Because I knew I had 3 bullets left." And it's just like, oh, that is proto Marvel, my friend.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the scene in particular. He's got like a gun, and they're
Yeah,
like under fire, and they're like, "Oh, I'm out of ammo. How much ammo do you have left?" He checks, and he goes, "Enough." And then he stands up and he shoots one bullet. In one shot, one kills the guy, and he walks away. Like, oh yeah, that definitely feels like
yep, classic
that's
Marvel.
classic Marvel. But that was happening in like 2010.
Right? Did that movie come out 2010?
Let's find out. Hold on. J.J. Abrams. No, J.J. Abrams, Mission Impossible 3, 2006.
Oh, so yeah,
Before.
it's proto Marvel.
Yeah, so Mission Impossible, the first one came out in 1996. Mission Impossible 2 came out in 2000. Oh, these movies had a habit of coming out 6 years apart. Mission
Right.
Impossible came out in 96. Mission Impossible 2 was 2000. Mission Impossible 3 was 2006. And the Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol bucks the trend a little bit and comes out in 2011.
Ooh, they saved a year.
They saved a year.
Yeah. Another thing that was like trending in the 90s was
Mm.
the ability of agents to go on a speeding train and fight the last fight. We had Speed do that, with the famous line from Keanu is like, I'll always be better than you. And it's like, at least I'm taller. And then he pulls the guy up and his head falls off.
Right, right.
Um, and then, they did it with Mission Impossible, and then they did it with Bond. So it's like
Right.
going on a train was so big in the 90s that maybe they just got like a way to film it.
Right, right. They figured it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it definitely felt like a real left turn, especially in the first one, because a lot of the first part of that movie is Ethan Hunt trying to figure out like who he can trust, who are the bad guys? Can he even trust himself? And then, at the last part, he's just fighting a helicopter in a
Yeah,
train tunnel. Like, what?
right. I would venture to say if you can explain the first Mission Impossible in a way that I would understand, with all the twists and all the turns and who has the list and who doesn't have the list, and
Right.
also that was before cloud computing, so the whole plot would go down the toilet with just one upload to a cloud.
Right? Yeah, no, I mean it's pretty convoluted, and I mean I watched it and then I immediately read the Wikipedia plot summary just to make sure that I understood everything that happened, because it's exactly like you say, like it's like weird, and it's very much so you can't trust the narrator.
Yeah, almost like they don't want you. They wanted you so badly not to predict it that they overdid it just a little.
Right, right.
And that makes
And
sense.
mhm.
Espionage movies in the 90s, it was a sin to be predictable.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I always think of in the classic Hunt for Red October when they just switch from Russian to English with no explanation. You're like, wait, what? What did I miss?
Yeah. Ah,
And my favorite thing about that is in Hunt for Red October, um, is that they didn't even tell like Sean Connery's character to even try and attempt like a Russian accent. They're just like, you can just speak in your regular, English accent or Irish or whatever he is, Scottish. You can
yes.
speak in your regular Scottish accent. And everyone will pretend. They'll just
Right.
accept it. People will just accept it.
Yeah. That movie was iconic. All I remember is like the slapping scene at the end. Give me the key. No, slap. Give me the key. No,
No.
slap. And then Mad TV made a parody of it, which an all women's cast fighting
Mhm.
over their PMS in a sub. Give me
Oh
the
no.
chocolate. No, slap.
That's a very Mad TV
Yeah.
premise. Uh, that's so funny. Yeah, it definitely, compared to nowadays, it just feels like, the 90s was such a lawless time for making movies. You could just run into an office and say, "Hey, I got a $50 million backer. I'm gonna have, you know, uh, t- I don't know, Daniel Day-Lewis, and he's gonna be a baker," and
Yes.
a studio would greenlight it.
Right. Like I feel like spy movies wanted to be very smart,
Sure.
and then they realized that the audience, which understandably, college students up to 40-year-old demographic,
Mm,
main majority guys, guys were like, no, we don't want smart. We want the guy snowboarding while missiles are being shot off a mountain. And then, those movies kind of ended. Like we don't have like political thriller like stare downs anymore.
right. Right.
Now we had Triple X, The Return of Xander. Um, we had Atomic Blonde.
Right. Right.
Like I can't think of any movie where it's like, where you can feel the political tension also with the espionage tension.
Right. Right. Like, don't get me wrong, John Wick, perfect action movie. But,
Hmm.
you wouldn't say that it's a political thriller.
No, he does not have one conversation that changes someone's mind.
Right. They don't talk about the GDP of Japan.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it definitely, I totally agree. But it also feels like it's one of two extremes. It's either, the Triple X, Return of Xander, or it's Zero Dark 30, and that's all it is, right? It's just like people behind a
right.
computer finding Osama bin Laden, and like that's the political intrigue for like 3 hours.
Or you get like you want to talk about government. Well, here's like true stories of how our government screwed up. Like you get Snowden. Like that's our espionage thriller.
Right.
And it's like, oh, okay, so now I have to feel bad about my country, and I get to see nerds on a computer. Great.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm doing a quick Google search, but I wonder when the last like espionage thriller movie came out.
I mean, maybe the Equalizer series. I mean,
Sure.
that's more Born Identity, like thuggery, than
Right.
anything else.
Right. Exactly. I guess kind of that Netflix original movie, The Gray Man,
Yeah,
came out earlier with Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans, but I
yeah.
mean, I don't know. The thinking in that was very
They had like Russo brothers stink all over it.
right. Right.
Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. You guys tell us what was the most recent, you
I
know.
mean, I remember seeing a poster with Tom Hanks, and it was like a Russian movie
Oh,
where
Bridge of Spies.
the Bridge of Spies, and I just like my brain put together that he was just on this that bridge trying to convince people not to cross it for an hour and a half. Am I wrong? I don't know.
No, I don't know. I don't know if you are. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, it definitely feels like yeah, it feels like those have kind of gone away. It definitely felt like for a while at least there was like a summer, a summer blockbuster that was, of that nature.
Hmm. And I feel like
Between the Bourne movies or,
yeah,
a James Bond movie or, something of that nature.
yeah, they tried to bring back Bourne in a
Mhm.
movie, and it was so like mid. It
Right.
was it was like you could tell the director was bored and just checking things off the list, like
Right.
ridiculous driving scene, check.
Right.
Weird double cross, check.
Check. Check.
Yeah, it was just yeah, it wasn't fun to watch at all.
Right. Don't totally agree. And we didn't even talk about maybe the greatest spy thriller of all, of course, being Agent Cody Banks.
I thought it was going to be Johnny English.
I mean that. Yeah. I mean those are those are two very quality spy action films,
Yes.
and I think Rowan Atkinson needs to make a comeback.
He made three of those Johnny Englishes. The first one was good.
Yeah, it was good.
Second one had two laughable moments. Third one I can't even find, though I'm pretty sure I could get that movie for a nickel.
Straight to DVD.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. Yeah, I love Rowan Atkinson. I love him in that movie, and yeah, like it definitely, even the spy thriller. It really even it spawned a whole genre of film.
Hmm.
Out of it, parodies of it, copies of it. Even what was that movie that came out pretty recently? I think it was like an animated spy movie, but it was like for kids.
Oh,
Um,
um,
oh, Spies in Disguise.
I thought you were going to say Spy Kids.
I mean, Spy Kids also.
Yes.
Um, right. Um, but that became like a genre in and of itself, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it
Heck,
definitely feels
even
like it's
Minions
kind of
became
gone.
a 007 parody. How did that
Right.
happen?
Right. People want it, I guess. I don't know.
Well,
somebody somebody somewhere
you
said there was a market.
yeah. Well, now they blurred the lines. Usually what you had is you had a movie that was like dead serious, like Reindeer Games
Right.
or
True
that one,
Lies.
yeah, one of those. And then Leslie Nielsen had to come in and make a parody of that movie that was so stupid. And
Yeah,
you could be
Leslie
like,
Nielsen used to be the only game in town.
yeah. And now everyone's blurred together. So you have a movie that's so stupid and trying to be so serious at the same time.
Right. No, 100%. Totally agree. And yeah, no, now that you mention it, yeah, it used to be Yeah, that Leslie Nielsen was, between Police Academy and
Spy
um,
Hard.
Spy Hard and um, wow, what was the other one? Shoot.
He did
Uh,
he did The Fugitive, like a very underrated parody of The Fugitive. I forget what it's called, but it's it's some of the best parody and physical comedy and some of the most idiotic jokes you could find.
yeah, and yeah, it's such a shame because it definitely feels like that genre and all subsequent genres have kind of gone away um and
Right.
and they've kind of they've stepped off the big screen and now into retirement and they've replaced kind of police procedural shows as now instead of political action
Right.
thriller TV shows, and now it just feels tame and everyday.
Yeah. One of the trends I'm seeing on NBC is the trend of the older, wiser, not quite Forrest Whitaker, but very close detective who has like a tragedy that happened to him,
Right,
but also has like this special gift that is
right,
really helpful at solving murders.
right.
Um, that's the one I'm talking about is the irrational.
Oh, I was gonna
Yeah,
say The Voice.
the voice.
Sorry,
I mean,
continue.
yeah, irrational just came out, and before that they
Mm.
had like the was it the Bones one, the one that Denzel Washington made a movie of, and they made a series. But
Oh
that
yeah,
just
yeah.
seems to be like a trend. So, and they all want to be that actor from Britain who played Bloodsport.
Oh, Idris Elba.
Yeah, they all want to be that. Like they're all trying to channel that energy, and like NBC is kind of hoping you don't mind that. I mean, they still these are great actors, and I'm sure they have a wonderful like these are enjoyable shows.
Sure.
But I see this trend kind of happening.
Yeah, no, totally agree.
Also, Adam, um,
Mm.
while we're on bunny trails,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
1,000 degrees from what we were talking about. So I've been watching. Like the world is all about Netflix exclusives and Hulu exclusives
Right, and what have you.
and HBO exclusives, right?
Right.
So you watch them, right? And
Mhm.
they're gritty, they're dark, there's F bombs, there's heads flying off, there's what have you. It's serious as a heart attack,
Right.
right? And then you watch a show that's like on basic cable, like an NBC show, like Irrational Man or something. And you're watching this and you're like, is this made for children? Like this feels so tame compared to like this feels like the skim milk of
Yeah.
and it's just so weird that like there if you go to basic cable you have like this very tame show. But the
Right.
minute you put the word exclusive and put it behind a $10 a month subscription wall, you go ape crazy.
Right, right. And it's almost shocking. You're like, "Oh, wait, what?" It's
Right.
surprising. Like do you know the TV show Longmire?
Yes.
So it's on Netflix, and I've been making my way through it just on my spare time. It's like a pretty run of the mill kind of police procedural. He's a
Mhm.
sheriff in a small town, but this small town sees like the amount of crime that Chicago sees.
Yeah.
Um, and it's rated TVMA, but they don't even show people getting murdered. Like it cuts away, and I'm like, this is TVMA. They don't swear.
Right.
No one gets naked. There's violence, but it's like, you know, four
Right.
o'clock in the afternoon NCIS violence,
You're right.
and it's TVMA, and I was like, oh wait, what? Let's, I thought there was gonna be some mutilation or something.
Right. Or another great example is watching what is it? It's not CSI. It's the other murder show with all the psychopaths.
Oh, Criminal Minds.
Criminal Minds. Watching Criminal Minds on CBS until you get to like the exclusive made for Paramount season. And it's
Yeah,
just like, we want to show you all the decapitations, brains falling out.
the stuff we couldn't show
Yeah,
you.
we want to show you everything.
Yeah, they really went off the deep end.
Like, I don't know, it's just so weird. There's something about the word exclusive taped to a show that like makes the director want to say, like, all right, I'm not going to put an eraser to the script. Like,
Right.
it's your fault for having children.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, and to me, like the first time I really kind of understood what, TVMA Netflix meant was I was watching, the first season of Daredevil, and there's a bit where, you know, uh, Charlie Cox's character Daredevil, as a kid, he's like stitching up his dad in the living room, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't cut away. They
Yeah.
just show this like 8-year-old kid stitching up his dad in their kitchen. Just like they show
Mm-hmm.
the whole procedure, and I was like, "Oh, okay, this is it. This is the future."
Right. And that's well, I don't know how much Disney had in on that, but
I mean,
they
that
had
was
to know.
pre-Disney. Yeah,
Yeah,
right, right.
they had to know that
Um,
Disney was watching over their shoulder.
yeah,
So,
right, right. And they did some pretty violent things on that show. A lot of violent things, especially in
yeah.
Punisher and things. But it's funny to see the real difference.
Right. Which makes me think that like when someone writes a script for a show,
Right.
like it's really like M rated, MA rated, like, and then like the basic cable gets a hold of it and they just put a huge eraser to half of it, and then you see the director like throwing furniture around. How could they?
Right,
I
right.
deserve to be vicious and savage.
Right, right. I know, totally agree. And I I don't know. There's some shows that I think get it right, where they don't lean too far one way or another.
Right.
Um,
Like
you
Daredevil.
know, yeah, like Daredevil, I
Yeah.
think really nails it. I think Punisher goes a little bit too far into the violence category, but
Mhm.
understandably within the context of the character, like okay, like I understand. But then you'll have stuff where it's just like unnecessarily violent, and you're like,
Yes.
like wait, what? Just because you have a TVMA rating does not mean that you have to show us, this guy getting disemboweled.
Or yeah, like Dexter. Like
Yeah,
I,
Dexter.
I
That's a great
understand that
example.
the guy is into bloodless mutilation,
Right.
but do you really have to go back to the strip club for the eighth time in a row?
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, or shows that are trying to portray themselves as harder, but it just seems like very PG-13 y,
Right.
I can't think of anything a better example than, Captain America Winter Soldier. Like that movie didn't shy away from, violence, it didn't shy away from anything, but it felt perfectly within like a PG-13 rating. Whereas opposed to the Black Widow movie, where it just felt like it was trying too hard to be PG-13, you know what I mean? Where it just felt kind of hokey and it didn't feel real
Yeah.
and fake.
Yeah. I read an article on crack.com about how because we have CGI now,
Hmm.
we can make such weird physics and violence choices and not think about them.
Right.
And then one of their examples is in the Winter Soldier when the Winter Soldier, like, I don't know, he uppercutted a guy and he went through the blade of like a helicopter
Yeah.
thing. And they're like, They didn't even think about how the fact that he straight up just murdered a dude Mortal Kombat style. They just thought we have the CGI to do it.
Right.
Like if you were using real actors and trying to do portrayals in a movie, you wouldn't say, well, what's a practical effect? Going through a helicopter blade. But now that we can do it, and Disney knows how to make it bloodless, sleepy bullets. Why not?
Why not? Yeah, no, I totally get. Is that in Winter Soldier? I can't remember that.
They,
I'm sure it was. Or maybe it was that Civil War?
oh, whatever. I think it was Winter Soldier. I read that in an article.
Sure.
So
I'm just trying to picture. I can't picture the scene. I believe you, but I can't
right.
picture. It's been so long.
I kind of want to put it in slow motion and see. Do I see any blood? Do I see
Right.
any guts?
Well, I mean, I think a really good example recently is in the most recent Black Panther movie, where Shuri gets freaking impaled on a piece of metal,
Yeah.
and for for no other reason than for an audience reaction, but there's like no blood. Like she gets full on impaled and pulls herself off of it, and she's totally fine.
Right. It's like Marvel has like numb organs effect,
Right.
and it happens in Thor and Love and Thunder. Um, who was it? It wasn't the Natalie Portman character, but the other female. I think it was Valkyrie. She
Yeah.
got straight up impaled, and
Yeah.
then they just did like a cut scene. Like they just and
A
she's like in
swipe.
the
Yeah.
hospital, like up, and she's all cheery and like, ooh, So I guess everyone, like, if you're a god or if you're a superhero, your guts don't
Yeah.
equate to quality of life.
For sure. For sure. And I mean, it definitely has in recent years become, definitely a problem where protagonists can just, you take Dominic Toretto, right? He launches himself across a
Right,
freeway, catches somebody and slams into a car at, 95 miles an hour and gets up and walks away.
right.
Or, you have, John Wick gets shot and he falls off a 10-story building and he's fine. Um, and those are just kind of tropes that we just kind of accept,
Yeah,
and
and
you gotta let
sometimes they
yourself
come out with
fly.
articles
Mm,
like, okay, if cover your ears if you haven't seen the last episode of Secret Invasion right now. Okay, ready? But there's a
yeah,
scene where Nick Fury is like doing trank darts into everyone.
right.
And what they don't tell you about trank darts is like you either get the formula like 100% right and you adapt it to how much the person weighs, or that
Right.
person's going to be like in a wheelchair for the rest of their life,
Right, they're
or
in a coma.
or just dead.
Right.
And here he is, he's like putting like 8 different guys to sleep of different height and size, and like, yeah, half of them are in comas. Yep.
Yeah, half of them are in comas, the other half are dead.
Yeah. But in
Totally.
the Marvel universe, you just go sleepy for a few seconds. That and a punch to the head just makes you go sleep.
Right. That's one of my biggest pet peeves is when people are like engaged in a fight
Hmm.
and someone just gets roundhouse kicked to the head as hard as possible and they just
Right.
get up and they're like, "Oh, I'm just getting started." I'm like, "No, you need to go to the hospital." Like you are going to be in a coma.
The fact that you said I'm just getting started is signs that you're having a concussion, sir.
You
And so,
immediately have CTE. Like it's
yeah.
you have no options.
Or
Yeah,
or
it's
the well-timed punch that makes the guy fall asleep for like 6 hours, 8 hours. And
right.
they say anything that makes you black out for longer than 10 seconds means instant brain damage. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Meanwhile, these guys like leveraging in a sleeper hold for like 10 minutes.
yeah, you're shutting off oxygen to their brain, or you're making their brain like tap against the skull. That's what a blackout is. and that's only supposed to bring you out for like 3 to 5 seconds,
Right.
not like a whole day.
Exactly. Or I also love how the movies will try to explain something away with like vague technology, like
Yeah,
in The Dark Knight Rises, where Batman's like, "Oh, my knees are getting bad." And he just has like a magical knee brace that helps him absorb impacts. You're like, "Wait, what?"
well,
he just he just has a magic science knee brace that repairs his ACL.
yeah, and he has a secret button that turns off people's cameras.
Right,
I don't know how that works.
magic.
Yeah,
It's all magic, but we just accept it, right? Like
right.
even even if you got shot with a bulletproof vest on, you would still like break a rib. Like it's
Yeah,
not fun.
you'd be out. Like, there's no such thing as like I can take 6 more of these.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. And we haven't even gotten into like the the DC, craziness. You
Right.
know, Batman, I don't kill people, and then like,
Right.
shoots people with rubber bullets from a massive cannon in his Batmobile.
Or the fact that like his Batmobile has an intimidation missile.
Right,
How do you plan for that? Like, oh, I just want to intimidate them, so I'm going to shoot a missile in a crowded garage.
right. Or I always think of in the Arkham games where he's like interrogating someone and he like threatens to run over their head with a car. You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
You're just like, what? In what world is he just fine? They're just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody, it was one of those funny videos online. They just did like a kill counter for every person that Batman would kill in the Arkham Knight trailer alone, and the,
Right.
the count was like into the hundreds. Like,
Right.
of this man got his head smashed into like the fuse box and just gets electrocuted with a house equivalent of electricity, and he's
Right.
just unconscious. Like, no, he's dead. That
Yeah.
guy's dead.
Sleepy time.
Sleep dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just really want a realistic action movie or a guy gets shot with a bulletproof vest and says, "I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go home."
Yeah. Like, this was intended for one bullet, and then I should back out of this.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well,
Or there's a sword fight and they get slashed on their face and they just like lick the blood. You're like, now
right.
you've done it. You're like, no, you need stitches.
Right. Right. Well, Adam,
Hmm.
so when CGI came out,
Right.
the idea of pinball fighting, where the hero, who's now a
Right.
CGI, can just be like knocked around, and he
Right.
can knock others around,
Hmm.
became a big thing. The Matrix, the second Matrix, um, where he fights all those Smiths, an
Yeah.
unbeatable man fights an unkillable monster, and yeah, there's cool kicks and cool punches, but none of it relates to anything. Nothing changes it at all.
Right. Right.
Um,
Totally.
like, and those things bore the crap out of me. Like the Final Fantasy Advent Children movie is like super powered Goku's like all shooting each other at point blank, and no one's feeling any pain. No one's reacting. No one's saying, "Ow, ow, ow!" That I could lose if you keep doing that. It's more like, no, I just want to, keep shooting you in the face. And
Right.
so, like, those just bore the crap out of me. Like when
Mm.
you have just a bunch of Gokus just hitting each other with no effect. It's
Right.
actually the opposite of what makes pro wrestling fun. Is seeing another person sell an attack and like get
Yeah.
weaker is
Right.
actually what makes it exciting.
Right. No, 100%. And yeah, it definitely feels like people either go to one extreme or the other. It's either people no
Yeah.
sell stuff or it goes, just commando or Delta Force where someone gets, there's a grenade that blows up in a massive 40-ton nuclear explosion
Right.
from a little grenade. And the guy does, a front flip off a porch onto a pile of mulch, and then
Right.
that pile of mulch explodes, and he does another front flip off of that. Like
And
there's
it just keeps
no
happening.
there's no in between.
Right, right. But the one thing that super intrigued me, what I loved about
Mhm,
the original Born Identity movies,
mhm.
is that like each choreographed move resulted in like there was danger on both sides. So
Yeah,
when that
100%.
guy jumped through the window and like Bourne had to do a fist to fist fight with him.
Yeah, sick.
And each move like resulted in him stabbing him with a pen or like
Right.
shooting him in the neck. And like you
Right.
could feel like, oh, if he keeps doing that, he'll die.
Right,
You
right.
know.
It
And
felt
so those
real.
kind of fights are like, I am with you 100%. They're
Yeah.
slower, but like each move means something.
Right. No, I totally agree. And
Yeah.
I mean, you could really probably count on, your fingers how many movies are actually like that.
Yeah.
Most are one way or the other. And
Right.
um and not that there's anything wrong with that. I think there are a ton of movies that have exaggerated action that are, people would say are top 50 movies of all time. Stuff like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or like the John Wick movies, or Saving Private Ryan. Like those movies have exaggerated action, but
Hmm.
it has a point. There's a purpose.
Right. And Saving Private Ryan put you on edge because you were like, who's going to die next?
Right.
And it better not be Vin Diesel.
And then it is Vin Diesel.
And then it is Vin Diesel.
Spoiler, sorry.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, no, it definitely does. It feels like it's been a while since something's come out. I mean, I will say that John Wick does a pretty good job of that. Like you especially in the most recent one where you feel how much pain he's in. There's a
Yeah.
sequence in the fourth one where he fights his way up this like really steep hill, up this flight of stairs, and he gets like
Um,
almost to the top, and then somebody like throws him all the way down the set of stairs, and then he has to
oh,
fight his way back up the same set of stairs again. And you're just
right.
like, oh, it just he is Sisyphus, right? Like that's
Yeah.
just like you just feel that pain. But also at the same time, John Wick should have died.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, the latest Bond movie had something where he goes up a single. I don't think it was like a one camera type deal, but you see
Mm.
him going upstairs and just like bad guys are coming out Call of Duty style, and he just has to, he has to like take them out one by one.
Right, right. And it's just yeah, it's just a lot. Um yeah, so long story short, thanks Mission Impossible. You gave us all that.
Right.
There's actually, speaking of oneers, there's actually a pretty sick one in Mission Impossible 3. There's a bit where you just get like 45 seconds of Tom Cruise doing the best run in cinema history just through
Right.
this, Chinese market, and it's literally just him running at a medium distance. And it's just
That's
him
on the
running.
checklist. Yeah.
And it's sick. It's so good. But I'm like, Tom Cruise has, the
Right.
best run in all of cinema. There's nobody even close.
Right. And if Leslie Nielsen was still alive, they would try to make a parody of that run, and we're getting ripped off.
We are getting ripped off.
Yeah.
It's his back is so straight.
Right. And they teased you with the run in that movie because there's
Mm.
when he was getting out of when they were breaking out Philip Seymour Hoffman, he starts running and then someone shoots a missile and blows him into the side of a car, and they're like, "Oh, he
Yeah.
thought he was gonna run, but he didn't."
Yeah, that was crazy. Like this man survived a sidewinder missile that exploded 5 feet away from him. Not only did he,
Mhm.
survive the bomb blast, but he survived the impact with a car that should have shattered his spine.
Right, right. He had a bulletproof vest.
He really does,
Yeah,
right? That's what
right.
he has. Um, Man, maybe that's we should do an episode on that in the future. about maybe actors and what they're best known for.
Right. You know,
Because Tom Cruise, it's the run.
yeah, it's the run and it's the laugh.
Oh
Um,
yeah, the weird smile.
yeah. Which makes me wonder, were those two things in the Dark Universe movie, The Mummy? Because if they were not, I know why it failed now.
I I actually I didn't I didn't see it, so I don't know.
Yeah. Neither did I. I just remember where I don't know, he's on a plane fighting a mummy.
Right.
That's the only scene I know.
Hey, you could have taken that and said, "This is this is for Mission Impossible," and I'd believe you.
Yeah. You know that Mission Impossible where he fights that mummy that comes back from the dead? You're like,
Yeah,
yeah, I think that was the fourth one
right.
with the
Ghost
ghost.
Protocol. Yeah, Ghost Protocol.
Yeah,
That seems right.
yeah. Well,
So good.
Adam, speaking of ghosts, such a segue. Um,
Segue.
it's fall. It's Halloween. It's so
Woohoo!
much. It's
Spooky
warm
season.
cider and warm donuts, and
Mhm.
you're either gonna win you over with the spooks and haunts. Like my 3-year-old son is obsessed with zombies and
Mhm.
vampires, and we haven't told him what they do in lore. He just thinks they exist to be creepy.
Right.
Or you're gonna get into your UGG boots, wrap yourself in a fleece, and sit by a fire while drinking some cider while someone
Right.
writes love letters to you.
Exactly. It's that time of year, and as a man that's a proud Northeasterner and who owns a black cat as a pet. Fall's my season, man. I love fall.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do believe that fall has, the best movies that are themed around it, whether it's Halloween themed or the color palette, whatever it is, fall movies
Right.
are just the best.
I mean, yeah, there's something about those reds, yellows, and oranges that just make you feel all, warm and tingly inside.
Right. Right. Even the weather is telling you go inside and watch a
Yeah.
movie.
Right. So I think it's best if you share your 5 favorite fall/horror movies, and I'll share mine.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I'm gonna start out with some might say it's a little basic, but I think it's the standard by which every great fall movie should be measured by, and it's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Mhm.
It's only 25 minutes. I would say it's a movie. I don't know. It's got a DVD, but to me, like, it's everything that um a fall movie is, right? It's
Right.
about Halloween, it's about pumpkins, it's about, you know, ghost costumes and randomly just fighting the Red Baron. It's fine.
Right.
Um and it's incredible, like, it to the point. And it's not the sole reason I have a ghost tattoo. I have a tattoo on my right forearm that's like it looks like a ghost in a sheet. So it very iconically from the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. They all dress up as ghosts. And
Mhm.
for several years I dressed up as Charlie Brown's ghost, right, when he like tries to cut eye holes and there's like too many holes in it.
Yep.
That's been a staple Halloween costume for me for a couple years. Yeah, that movie's just iconic. It's great. I mean, every red-blooded American has seen it, and to me, it just screams fall.
That is a great movie. And also very leaves you on a cliffhanger because do we ever find out if the Great Pumpkin exists?
I don't know. Maybe in subsequent ones, maybe they do, but I like to think it's more about the idea that the Great Pumpkin exists in Linus's heart.
Yes, because maybe, just maybe, Halloween is something more.
Right. I also love the i- the idea of a man that has such a great grasp of the Christmas story also believes in the Great Pumpkin.
Right. He was like 100% historical authenticity for Christmas. And then Halloween, his parents totally trolled him.
Right. Right. Like he's got a great theological grasp on the meaning of Christmas. And he also believes that a giant pumpkin comes to life every Halloween.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, to me that just screams Halloween, and it screams Christmas or Christmas. It screams fall, and to me it's the measuring stick for all the subsequent ones I'm going to talk about.
Yeah. And I'm glad you went into the child, like the heart of
Yeah,
the child. And it kind of makes me sad because I remember I was always into the Thanksgiving Garfield
yeah,
series, which was back when it was cool to celebrate Thanksgiving with a cartoon.
right,
So Garfield he would wake up and he'd go on the farm, and then he would see what life was like on a Thanksgiving on the farm.
right.
And I always remember the way they drew that turkey looked amazing. Like, yeah, it probably was like the reason I think that all cartoon turkeys would look amazing because of this Garfield episode.
Right, right. Totally, totally agree.
Well,
Okay, well,
my
yeah. What's your
number
first
one
one?
movie, um, this was an oldie and a goodie, and it also let me know how far you could go in a PG movie.
Oh,
When I saw Casper,
ooh,
I believe it was 1992, maybe 93. Um, it was a very clever movie for being Casper. Like the hunky dory Casper deserves this kind of cleverness. Like um it had good actors and actresses in it. It had some jokes that probably went over my head. It had some PG-13 language that I'm not sure how it got past the censors.
it
Um,
was the early '90s.
yeah. It had themes of resurrection and being able to bring someone back from the dead.
Mm.
And I don't know, like Casper just like really whoever was in charge. I like to think that the person who made Casper did it in the same spirit and artistic vision that Greta Gerwig did with Barbie.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair assessment, especially for the time period. It definitely, yeah, they took some risks.
Yeah, I mean, they totally could have kitted it up, just made it about helping her friends share and, added things that only like 5 and 6 and 8 year olds would have understood. But they totally, like, they got the adults involved and the kids. And they
Right.
made it like a Ghostbuster reference. They dressed up someone as a Ghostbuster trying to get rid of the ghosts in the house. And then the Ghostbuster comes out and says, "Who are you going to call? Somebody else." Yes.
Yeah, no, it's great. What's the cast for that movie?
Uh, well, it's got Christina Ricci,
Hmm.
who, like, I'll always remember, like, oh, she's so cool. She's so, she's the hip teen. You don't mess with her. Um, it's got Bill Pullman
Oh
before
wow.
he became president.
Right,
Like,
right,
and he was just thinking about it.
right, right.
Um, I don't know if anyone knows Kathy Moriarty. She was in Raging Bull, and
Mm-hmm.
Eric Idle, which is of course Monty Python.
Right,
So
right. Yeah,
good,
pretty solid
good on
cast.
you.
Good on you. Yeah, no, this is yeah, it's very solid. Very solid movie. Yeah, it definitely feels it's a very good like '90s movie, right? Like just it's it's at the 90-minute mark, right? Not too long,
Right.
not too short. And the CG effects are good. They do a lot of practical effects, and it's solid.
Hmm. And then like the PS1, Saturn, and 3DO came out with like a video game based off of it. And I have to say, those graphics, ever since seeing them in a magazine, made me want to say, uh, I really want to try that game. Casper is a rising tide, and all ships are floating.
Right, right.
Yes. Oh, J.J.
Totally.
Abrams was supposed to do a rewrite of the script. He did an uncredited rewrite of the script,
Oh, okay.
and he gave
Interesting.
a backstory to Casper.
Oh, what was his backstory?
Well, he was a boy who died of pneumonia at 12.
Oh, that's really sad.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, we're talking about a ghost here. You got to talk about how he died.
Yeah, I guess I guess I never really put two and two together.
A lot of people think, the theory out there is that Richie Rich, because that was a cartoon that played
Mm,
alongside of it.
right.
Um, he's the rich kid who died and becomes Casper,
Oh no.
which is haunts his own mansion.
Oh, that's so sad.
Sad, but I
Uh,
want to see that.
that's that's quite a fan theory,
Yeah. Ooh,
man. Mm.
this is the first feature film to have a fully CGI character in a leading role. So
Oh, wow. Hey, look at that.
yeah,
The more
I
you
mean
know.
Casper. Who thought Casper was gonna do all this?
Who'd have thunk? Oh man. Okay. Shall I jump right
Yeah,
into my next one?
yeah.
Mike, we're taking a bit of a left field, a left turn, out of right field. And one of my favorite romantic comedies of all time, When Harry Met Sally.
Oh yeah,
I I mean that movie, if that movie doesn't make you want to go to New York City in the fall, I don't know what will. I mean, just
right,
the scenic shots of them in, walking down the street, walking through Central Park, wearing cable knit sweaters.
right,
It just screams cozy to me. And there's a bunch of famous shots of them in Central Park, walking through, sitting on benches, talking, and yeah, it just screams. It's just everything that you want from the Northeast. And yeah, they nail the color palette and the cinematography. And they even eat a delicious warm sandwich and probably some matzo ball soup at Katz's Deli. And yeah, so When Harry Met Sally, if you haven't seen this movie yet, what are you doing listening to this podcast? You clearly don't love movies enough. Go watch this right now. Pause what you're pause this podcast and go watch When Harry Met Sally. Do yourself a favor.
yeah,
And yeah, this movie just screams fall to me.
right. Also, another great movie that was parodied by Mad TV. When Harry Met Shamu, or no, When Harry Met Willie. It was about
Oh,
falling in love with a whale.
beautiful.
Yes. But here's a fun. If you haven't seen this movie yet, go on YouTube, do do the Harry Met Sally diner scene,
Yeah,
and then invite your
iconic.
parents into the room.
Iconic. I mean, to be fair, if you do that and your parents walk into the room, your parents will know already. They've seen
Right.
it.
They're probably the ones trolling you.
Right, right, exactly. I mean, yeah, the movie's iconic, and yeah, it's one of it's got to be on the Mount Rushmore of romantic comedies, right?
Right. Right. I always get that one mixed up with Sleepless in Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, there's like three of them, right? It's like Sleep in Seattle, When Harry Met Sally, and like You Got Mail. They're all kind of the same.
Right, right. One of them has where Billy Crystal used lights, or was it Billy Crystal? He used like the lights on a building to make a heart, and
Yeah,
that was an iconic scene.
yeah, yeah, really great. Yeah, peak fall vibes.
Hmm. Now this next movie,
Ooh.
uh, all the ratings said, don't invest. It's not as good as the movie that formed it. But when Lynn and I saw it, we're like, no, this is a solid movie. And I'm talking about Stephen King's Doctor Sleep.
Ooh, nice,
You
nice.
know, now this movie doesn't really make you want to cozy up with cider and donuts as much as it wants you to get into rehab right away, um, because it's about. Oh man, I'm gonna get all the characters from Stephen King's Shining wrong, but
Yeah.
it's about the son of the Jack Nicholson father from the
Hmm.
original, growing up, becoming a drug addict, like stealing money from kids, basically, uh, and but also having like this secret power that can capture like demons that try to haunt him at night. So
Right.
uh, I thought I read parts of the book and I wasn't interested in the book, but we did see the movie, and I think the movie did a really good job about that. I'm trying to get the names. Um, so Dan Torrance, Dan Torrance is the son of the Jack Nicholson guy. Here's Johnny, and he's living his life like haunted by literal ghosts. Became an alcoholic. In the book, he's using a lot harder drugs, but the movie decided to use just alcohol.
Right.
Um, he gets this job where he helps people go to sleep, like rest. He works at a hospice, and meanwhile, this coven, I want to say this bunch of witches, um, or like just these crazy people who use dark magic, led by this woman who's called Rose the Hat, and she got her name because she has a hat that doesn't fall off. Not the best naming, but they're trying to find these kids who have the shining power, and they extract it from them by killing them, and it makes them young. And there's this young girl that named Rose, or I'm sorry, named Abra, who has this power like super strong, and so Dan Torrance has to protect her. Uh, and it was a good movie, and the doctor in the book is supposed to be different from the movie. In the book, they originally blew up the house, so in the book he doesn't go back to the house, but in the movie he has to go back to the original mansion where the first Shining happened. So
Mm.
there was some definite, like, if you're a fan of the book, you can you could hate the movie, or if you love the movie, you can hate the book. So, but
Right.
Lynn and
Right.
I, we really enjoyed it, and it does make you feel kind of like in the fall mood because everything's dying, including the trees and the atmosphere.
Everything's dying.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, no, totally, totally. Yeah, no, Stephen King, I feel like is all his books either take place, right in that like the spookiest time of year, right when it's almost like it's almost winter, not quite winter,
yeah,
or like in the middle of like summer in
or
Maine.
a winter so dead nothing can live
Right,
feeling.
right. Just the
Right.
the worst times of year.
Right. Yeah, and one thing I realized is that Pet Cemetery came out that year, the remake,
Yeah.
and that movie got 113 million compared to Doctor Sleep, which only got 72 million.
Yeah. Well, I
And
think Doctor Sleep an Apple TV?
Doctor Sleep was a theatrical release, but I
Okay,
think
okay.
it got really pooped on. Like, I remember
Yeah.
people saying, "Oh, it doesn't honor the series." Like even Stephen King didn't like it,
Hmm.
you know.
Right,
And
right.
I don't know. I enjoyed it, and I guess people say, "Oh, It and Pet Cemetery are originals and not sequels, so let's give that our money."
Right, right. No, totally. Yeah, it's such a shame. I mean, the original is
Yeah.
so great. Um, oh wait, shall I get into
Yeah. Number
my
three.
my number three? My number three, and I hope I'm not stealing it from you. This is probably in my top on my Mount Rushmore of Disney movies.
Oh no.
Coco. Did I take one? Oh no,
Oh, wait, you said
Coco.
Coco?
Yes.
Okay, Coco's good.
Okay, good, good. I didn't
Okay.
take it from you. Um, but Coco, it's on my Mount Rushmore of of Disney movies. I mean, you laugh, you cry. The music is beautiful. It's cool because it's a fall movie, and but it's not like a Halloween movie. Obviously, it celebrates the Mexican holiday of the Day of the Dead. Um, yeah, and the movie is beautiful. The animation is stunning. That bridge between the land of the living, the land of the dead, peak fall colors. It's just the movie's just beautiful.
Hmm.
The music is haunting. And it's at the end of the day, it's a story about family, and
Hmm.
it's just beautiful. I can't say enough. If you haven't seen Coco yet, what are you doing? But yeah, to me, like this is the movie that you watch with you and your extended family. Like you've gone out to pick some pumpkins or some apples. You come home and mom's made, a big old batch of chili in a slow cooker, and you guys are all sitting around in the living room and you're just watching Coco, right? Like that's what that movie feels like to me. It's a big warm hug.
Right. I remember when Coco came out, and I must have blinked because when my eyes opened, Encanto came out, and I
Yeah,
said,
no,
"Wasn't there a second Spanish movie?" And it had skeletons, and no, and then I said, "No, I'm thinking of Corpse Bride." So, and I'm sad I missed it because when I heard one of the songs, I've only heard like the music from it. So I
yeah,
heard Un Poco Loco.
yeah.
I was like, I really like this song. I think I like it better than We Don't Talk About Bruno.
No, 100%. No,
Yeah.
it's so great. Yeah, the movies. I mean, have you seen it, Mike?
No, I've always wanted to. It's one of those things that's like in the back of your brain that your
Yeah,
brain says, "You want to have a good 2 hours? We'll do this." And then I say,
right.
"No, no, I'd rather be on Facebook looking at memes."
Well, Mike, do you and your family a favor. Watch this movie. You guys will love it.
It's if it's a fall movie, sure.
Yeah, you got to do it. It's so great. Heartwarming, funny. The voice acting is brilliant. The kid, the voice actor for the kid, he's great. He's wonderful. Got a great singing voice. Yeah, it's just beautiful. It's great.
Hmm.
And one of the few Disney movies that I've actually cried.
Ooh, ooh, that's
Yeah,
saying something.
yeah, it's just great. It's wonderful.
Hmm. Right. I'm trying to remember. There was another Day of the Dead movie that came out before that. I think it was called The Book of Life,
Something like
and
that.
like that one just kind of just existed.
Mm,
And I feel like Disney said, well, how dare they pick culture and before we did. Let's show them, guys. And then they came out with Coco, and
right.
it blew everyone away.
Yeah, Coco's great. It's great.
So my third movie
Mm.
um, is not a horror movie.
Ooh,
And when it popped up, I looked at a list of best fall movies, and it popped up, and I'm like, yeah, that is a fall movie. It makes me feel it's one of those like you and your family and your extended family go into this big BRB. It's outside of Cape Cod, and you just eat food all day and play like football outside
right.
kind of feeling to it.
Sure,
And
sure.
that is the movie Dan in Real Life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dan in Real Life with Michael Scott.
Himself.
Yeah, as himself. No, Dan in real life, yeah, it's got like a lot of subtle humor to it,
Mm.
and it doesn't like it doesn't like rely on the silliness of. Oh my gosh, I still think his name is Michael Scott. What's the actor's name?
Steve Carell.
Steve Carell. Yeah, it doesn't rely on Steve Carell's silliness to save it. It's like steeped in reality, and it's like very heartfelt. It's about a man trying to raise his daughters
Mm.
and just trying to get through, like, while raising them, trying to deal with his own heartbreak of losing his wife,
Yeah.
but also kind of dealing with his family in this cottage. And it's just, I don't know, it grabs you by the heart, and like if there is humor, it's very like subtle.
Yeah.
Like definitely no Bruce Almighty silliness
Right.
in Steve
Right.
Carell. And I appreciated that. Like it's kind of like jazz. It was the notes Steve Carell were not playing that made it so good.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. And um yeah, it's one of those movies where if you go into it just casually and being like, yeah, I wonder what this is about. I'm curious about Steve Carell. You know, the cast is pretty interesting. I think Emily Blunt is in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you're like, well, I'll give this a shot. I feel like you're gonna be really pleasantly surprised. And yeah, I think it really shows Steve Carell's range.
Mm-hmm. Right. And just I just love the subtle line when he's really bitter about his brother dating a girl he loves,
Hmm.
and the brother says,
Dane Cook the brother?
"Yeah, I think so. Yes,
Yeah,
Dane Cook." They actually make
yeah.
Dane Cook enjoyable to watch, so that's hard.
That's
Yeah. So, but there's that scene where he's like, "Oh, your voice is like an angel," and then like Steve Carell says he's eating corn. He's like, "This corn is like an angel,"
yeah, yeah.
and it's just that line is stuck in my head forever.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant
Yeah.
timing, and yeah, it captures a lot of the it kind of captures the I think a lot of emotions that people kind of feel at this time of year, right? Like
Hmm.
um there's a for some people there's just a certain kind of like melancholy for fall, right? This idea of things ending, of seasonal change. I think it's definitely one of the most dramatic season changes.
Right.
Um, and yeah, and coupled with the cold and the rain, yeah, this definitely is a movie, that you'll watch with a significant other if you really want to impress them.
Hmm.
You're like, oh, you're not just a guy that'll take me to watch Fast and the Furious 10.
Hmm.
You got heart.
Right. As much as I love the espionage, superhero, sci-fi,
Hmm.
these real life, grounded in reality, grab you at the heartstring movies. They give you a left hook out of nowhere, and you're like, wow. I think I love non-action movies.
Don't tell anybody, okay? I don't want to lose my street cred.
Right, right. Like just this movie's gonna be under my bed.
Oh man. Okay, shall I get into my fourth one?
Please.
Oh, Mike, this one is a personal favorite, one I love. Definitely a cult favorite. And it's such a shame that this movie isn't as well received critically. But Hocus Pocus, man,
Oh.
I love that movie. I mean, it's got quite the cast, right? It's got Sarah Jessica Parker, Bette Midler,
Hmm.
and they deliver on that front. But it just screams like a 90s childhood to me, right? Like it was like just spooky enough that I was like, oh yeah, this feels like Halloween. I felt kind of like naughty because like the I was only allowed to No, actually, I wasn't. I was allowed to go trick or treating, but I would watch it maybe with some of my friends that were only allowed to go trunk or treating. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it definitely was. It had witchcraft in it, so it definitely felt like, oh, this is naughty. Like this is something else.
Right.
But it just scratches all the itches of a nostalgic 1995, 1999, coming home from school, warming up some tomato soup and some grilled cheese, and it's a Friday night, and I get to, I just want to get into the season, right? And maybe it's a week or two before Halloween, and you're
Hmm.
coming up with ideas for a costume, and you're like, oh, what is this movie Hocus Pocus? It's spooky, it's scary, it takes place in Northeast. It takes place in like Massachusetts and Salem. And yeah, it just ticks all the boxes of like, a movie that's like horror and scary, but like not too scary.
Right.
Um, but also at the same time, like you could be like, oh hey, Sarah, down the street, you want to come over and watch something pretty scary, and she'll be
Right.
just scared enough that maybe you could hold her hand or something, but not too
Right.
scary that she won't talk to you because you took her to Saw.
Right. Learn that the hard way. Yeah.
We all did, Mike. We all
Right.
did.
We all thought Saw was the perfect get close to a girl movie, and then now we have to visit those women in like mental hospitals.
Ain't that the truth?
Yes.
Um, but that movie has it all, right? It's got dance numbers, it's got some questionable action sequences, it's got hokey child actors. But I think most importantly, it's just iconic, and it really, yeah. When I think of fall movies, Halloween movies, that's the one that really stands out to me.
Right. And from what I understand, like I remember seeing it, and the only scene I can remember is when he uses daylight savings time to defeat the witches, which is my favorite way to defeat witches. Um,
I don't think George Bush was thinking about that, but
yeah. But I also remember hearing at an improv class that
mm,
people who do like real pagan witch craft, they hated Hocus Pocus,
mm.
and they said this is such a bad representation of witches, and you're ruining our beliefs, and so they picketed this
Oh,
movie,
oh.
and people were, and when people see picketers, they automatically say, "Oh, I'm gonna watch this movie 10 times harder now." And so Disney actually asked the people who were picketing and protesting, "Could you come back because it's really up in our sales?"
Right, right. Please.
Yeah. So I thought that was very interesting. If you
Yeah,
ever
it
want a movie to do good, start protesting it.
right, because at the very least, people will be interested in why. And
Right.
yeah, no, I mean, I guess whatever. Like, if that's if that's what you're into, whatever. Who am I to judge? But it's at the end of the day, it's a cheesy Disney movie from the '90s, and
Mhm.
it's a great watch, and most importantly, it has a cute black cat in it, just like my cat Coco.
Well, Adam, while you were watching that, this didn't make my list, but I was always watching Halloween Town.
Oh, that's a great one too.
Yeah. Like probably 10 times cheesier than Hocus Pocus, which I don't know how you could achieve that, but um it it was the little brother next to Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I mean, it was very much in that same sort of family, right? Like
Right.
people that like the one like the other.
Right.
um yeah,
They,
Halloween Town's incredible.
yeah. And apparently there's sequels and TV series that Disney have
Oh.
returned to Halloween Town 2. And I
Oh.
can't even tell you what the original was about because it's been so long ago. But
Right.
I always felt like Halloween Town is like, I want to watch Hocus Pocus. We have Hocus Pocus at home, and it was Halloween Town. You know, so. But I'll get to mine because it's actually very Halloween Town ish.
Yeah.
So, uh, this movie scared the bejesus out of me.
Ooh.
I I probably never watched it all the way through. I probably saw scenes in different orders,
Mm.
but I have to go with Michael Keaton's best role, Beetlejuice.
I thought you were gonna say Batman.
Right. Well, I mean, if you compare these roles,
Yeah.
Beetlejuice is on one side of the spectrum and Batman's on the other. And I don't know, like Michael Keaton as like this, like he was Deadpool before Deadpool was Deadpool. But he
Right.
was also kind of Duke Nukem-ish, and he was kind of just dirty and gross, but also
Mm.
funny and silly. And that made you charming in 1988.
Right.
And so, and it was just, everyone knows about Beetlejuice. He became a Universal Studios like tour show. And I remember seeing that in 1992. And it's just, the cartoon series was great. They made up all these weird jokes. Like Beetlejuice could not do wrong in the early 90s. And I think it was because Michael Keaton kind of carried this role. That and it was like Tim Burton just made it so creepy. Like, you know, like when the shrimp became fingers and grabbed people's faces.
Right.
Um, even Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin putting blankets over their heads and pretending to be ghosts looked kind of scary. Um, just everything about this movie was hilarious if you weren't scared, but I was always scared, so I didn't know how funny it was till I saw it later.
Right.
And
And you realize.
mhm, yeah, I can't believe Dune ripped off those worms from Beetlejuice. Like that's crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah,
Right. No, totally agree. Beetlejuice, is so iconic. And really this episode really should be all the Tim Burton movies that we could possibly,
hey,
stick into this episode. I wanted to try to avoid, some obvious things. I feel like, you could throw any Tim Burton movie, Nightmare Before Christmas. Did he do Monster House?
he did Corpse Bride.
Corpse Bride. Did he do Coraline?
I think so, or Number
Feels
Nine,
right.
or
Yeah, I mean any Tim Burton. I mean, heck, Tim Burton's Batman or Tim Burton's Batman movie, even gets honorable mention here. But yeah, no, Tim Burton 100% owns this list, and yeah, we could have done this whole episode just on him. But
Mhm.
yeah, totally agree. Beetlejuice is just so iconic, and yeah, I think he definitely was ahead of his time too. I think in terms of its writing and its humor. I mean, I think
Right.
it's. I mean, I think it got its due from people when it came out, but I think subsequent generations and subsequent rewatchings, I think, have really elevated people's view of it, and especially recently, and it now has a Broadway play that's won awards, and I think there's a second Beetlejuice movie coming out. Um, so yeah, this movie is you can't say enough. This movie
Right.
is incredible.
And Michael Keaton was a comedian before he
Mm,
was known for superhero stuff.
right,
So he was doing all these funny movies. So and then after Batman, he was known for more serious stuff.
right,
I remember like he was in this like movie where he plays like a psychopath villain, and his the way he portrayed the character was kind of close to Beetlejuice, but it was a totally different feel. I can't find that movie, but it exists. Um, anyways, so that was Beetlejuice. What's your number five?
My number five, and maybe perhaps the culmination of all the things that I love about fall slash, horror slash, you know, atmospheric vibes, is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Ooh,
Um, so this is, first and foremost, my favorite Harry Potter movie.
really?
Um, yeah, it's my favorite, and I love the I think that this movie one kind of nails the spooks pretty well. Like there's werewolves, there's haunted mansions, there's sneaking around. Um but also themes of like going back to school, um all the great kind of scenery, landscape shots of Hogwarts and the ground, especially during the fall. But I think what really makes this movie, and what I think really makes it a great kind of scary or kind of horror movie is its director. So it's directed by Alfonso Cuarón, and who's better known, or I mean, also known for movies like Children of Men,
Mm-hmm.
um, and also movies like Roma and Gravity. Um, so he has experience and has works with he loves cinematography, and he also knows how to create like atmospheric drama. And yeah, so this movie has some of the most beautiful shots in in the series of Harry Potter. I think a lot of the later Harry Potter movies are just have this really gross beige color palette, whereas this one has a very fall centric kind of color palette. And it just feels, it's just a really good atmospheric storytelling coupled with a great plot. And yeah, so to me, Harry Potter is the ultimate kind of fall movie, as a whole, a series, between ABC Family running the Harry Potter movies on a loop all summer or all
Mm-hmm.
fall long. um but yeah, it just feels like fall, right? Like the whole back to school sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And witches and wizards and fantastical beasts. And yeah, it just kind of spelled fall for me. And this being my favorite Harry Potter movie, and with one of the strongest directors, I definitely think that this movie is pretty underrated. I think by people. I think when people think of their favorite Harry Potter movies, they think
Right.
of like the first two, and then they skip three and go right to four. And then people aren't the biggest fan of five, but they really love like six and the last two. But three is criminally underrated, and really, I do think it's the best paced, the best visually, and yeah, it definitely feels like the most fall to me.
Yeah, I know. I've always wondered about the Prisoners of Azkaban because
Mm.
people are usually very polar on it. Like it's the one we don't talk about. It's the one that you don't have to watch to enjoy the series. But that actually kind of made me want to see like what's so special or not special about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. I mean, it introduces a lot of important plot points that are, important for later on, and introduces people like Lupin, who's a
Mhm.
werewolf. Introduces Sirius Black, Harry's godfather, who's very important in later episodes. And yeah, I know
Mhm.
it kind of, it definitely also to me is, and kind of like what fall represents to me, is a step into maturity. Like the first two are very whimsical and fun, and of course, there's some, peril and danger in the first two, but it definitely doesn't feel like, oh, it feels like whimsical and fantasy, right? Well, the third one is like, it feels more real, and it kind of is a step into reality, and it feels more like a maturing of the series, and it kind of is the dividing line for me between the first two and then the last four.
Yeah. I know I saw the Goblet of Fire. Like that was my first
Mm,
experience with Harry Potter,
sure.
and I was like, I can't in I can't appreciate this like everyone else. Probably because I picked the fourth one in the series, so I have
No context.
no context for who's
Yeah,
significant and who's not.
right. And like, don't get me wrong, I understand why people like the fourth one. I think that's a lot of people's favorite. But to me, it just feels so bloated. It's like the movie is long, and to me, I feel like they don't. It's not. It's a good movie, but it's not a very good adaptation of the fourth book. Whereas
Right.
it feels like the first three and then the last three movies are very well adapted. And they pick out like the really big important plot points, and it feels like the fourth one just feels cumbersome to me.
Right. Yeah.
And it kind of is like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Like if you don't know the series, then you don't 100% know what's going on. You know enough to get through the movie, but at the end, you're like, well, that didn't really make sense.
Right. Yeah. It's I think people talk about that's the one where Edward Cullen dies in it.
Yeah, yeah,
And that makes people happy for some reason.
right. It's so funny that Robert Pattinson has been in like so many kind of tween
Yep.
sort of movies. But then he's also just like this raw vengeance Batman.
Right, right. He
Or
was
he's
in a
just like
movie where he
mm,
I don't know, smoked weed and that helped him fly through space.
something like that.
Something, yeah,
Yeah,
like that.
or he's in the lighthouse or
Right.
whatever.
So it's just such a weird career.
Yeah, right. I mean, I love Robert Pattinson.
Hmm.
I think he's one of the few actors that doesn't take himself and acting too seriously, but he's very dedicated to the craft.
Hmm. Those eyebrows.
It's the eyebrows and the jawline.
Yeah. So
Ooh.
my number one for
Hmm,
fall
hmm.
movies, Adam, is been a tradition in my um since 1992. We haven't kept to this tradition, but my family it's more of like a wishful thinking tradition. We're like, wouldn't it be nice to see this movie like we used to? But that is the movie Nightmare Before Christmas.
So
Um,
good.
it I think that's what really if I'm not mistaken, like Tim Burton was not Tim Burton, all caps until Nightmare Before Christmas. It
Right.
was beautiful stop motion claymation.
Hmm.
The movie was creepy as all get out. Like
Yeah.
it pretty much created the hot topics we see now. Like no doubt, without Nightmare Before Christmas, hot topics would not exist. And I mean, it's like the macabre, but with like a Disney magical twist to it,
Right.
and it's about Christmas, and it melds it with Halloween, and it does it in such a way um, where you know it's a creepy movie, but you still want the protagonist to win. You actually
Right.
like the idea that Halloween could be forever, and then you got like Oogie Boogie or the Boogeyman, and he was super creepy. And I don't know that the cinematography and the colors and just what they could do with stop motion is like put this movie on the map. And if that's not enough, they added songs that people love. So
Yeah. Totally. Totally. Totally agree. Um. And yeah. No. It it's Nightmare Before Christmas is interesting in that it felt like Tim Burton, because Tim Burton didn't direct it, right? Like he just wrote it, and um
oh, now I have to see who directed it. It was, oh yeah, you're right. It's Henry Selick.
right, right. but Tim Burton like did all the writing and like he came up with a story. Like it's his project. He just didn't necessarily direct it. I think that because I think he went out of his way to make sure that it was somebody that had familiarity with
Hmm.
um like that
Oh,
stop motion stuff
right, right,
because before because up until then he'd done like what Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Batman and Edward Scissorhands and
right,
things like that. But um yeah, it's really it's yeah, it's the big one, right? Like
right.
I think that's on the Mount Rushmore.
That's
Um
that's the Hulk Hogan of
right.
like Christmas movies or Halloween movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm,
Um and yeah, no, it's perfect, right? Like
mhm.
it just is. And really like, this episode should have been just what Tim Burton movies do you like?
Right, but
But
now that you told me about this director, Henry Selick, he was in
mm,
charge of James and the Giant Peach and Coraline,
yeah.
and he did an adaptation of that video game Little Nightmares,
Yeah.
which is perfect for him. So now maybe I've been giving the wrong credit where it's due.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm a
yeah,
Henry Selick fan.
I mean, Tim Burton still like was heavily involved with it. Like he wrote it, and I'm
Right.
sure he had a say in his direction. But yeah, no, totally. I'm right there with you, man. I definitely
Hmm.
think. I mean, all those movies feel like Halloween or
Right.
fall to me. I mean, just going through Tim Burton's just filmography, right? Like Beetlejuice, check. The Batman movies, check.
Yep.
Edward Scissorhands, check. Sleepy Hollow, super
Check.
underrated movie. Johnny Depp, check. That one's really scary. Have you seen that?
Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah, with it's Tim Burton, and it has Johnny Depp is in it and Christina Ricci, who we talked about earlier today.
Right.
Michael Gambon, who is Dumbledore. Um, yeah, it's scary. It's really good. Um,
Um, yeah.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which is creepy for different reasons. Corpse Bride, creepy, wonderful. Sweeney Todd, Alice in Wonderland, Frankenweenie.
Oh
Um,
yeah, Frankenweenie is that's a household name.
love that, and definitely one of Tim Burton's more underrated movies. Have you seen Dark Shadows?
Right. I know. I actually saw the show that it's based on. It's like a
Mm,
British soap opera with vampires
yeah,
and had some really cheesy effects. And he kind of turned it into a comedy.
yeah, it's like a dark comedy. I mean, it's a Tim Burton comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the cast in it is absolutely brilliant. It's Johnny Depp, Eva Green, Michelle Pfeiffer, Helena Bonham Carter, Chloe Grace Moritz. Like Christopher Lee is in it.
Yeah.
Alice Cooper has an appearance in it. It's solid. It's super good. Um, yeah. So really, this episode could have just been dedicated to Tim Burton, but I didn't want to fall into that trap. I wanted to branch out as much as possible.
Right, right. And yeah, I think we did a good job talking about all of that. What fall is.
Yeah.
It's either super cozy where you're falling in love or you're creeped out. But nothing in between.
Right. But if anyone does it, it's Tim Burton that manages to do both, right? Like he nails the creep and he manages the falling in love, right?
Right.
I
Well,
mean, between the Corpse Bride and Nightmare Before Christmas, right? It's all about love.
and Beetlejuice
Yeah.
has that scene where they're doing the séance and you see their bodies like wilting,
Yeah.
and that gives me nightmares beyond nightmares. So I guess
Yeah,
that's a love scene because
that's how I felt that scene. also gave me similar vibes to when I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark for the first time, and those people's faces melted off.
Right.
That's up same vibes.
Hmm. Yeah, like
Terrifying.
so you're either gonna go to bed like crying,
Right.
or you're gonna go to bed wishing for love, but never the same.
Never the same.
Hmm.
Oh man. But yeah, Meg, I super super psyched about this episode. Do you have any honorary mentions before we wrap it up? Any last thoughts?
All this talk about Coraline and Nightmare
Mhm.
Before Christmas made me think about Paranorman,
Oh yeah, that's a great
um,
one.
which one would assume that that's either a Henry Selick or Tim Burton,
No.
but it is not. It is, I think, a Chris Butler.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's also a good movie.
really solid. Super solid.
Yeah. What about you?
Um, let's see. I mean, we've talked a lot about maybe some of my honorary mentions. I mean, all the Tim Burtons, Batman for sure.
Mhm.
Um, but one that really stands out to me, and the reason I couldn't fully put it on my list because I couldn't, like it didn't specifically mention or talk about fall in any real way. But Knives Out, the first one.
Yeah, that was
Um,
on the list too.
mhm.
And also a Studio Ghibli esque type movie called The Deer King.
Oh, I don't know if I've seen that.
It's yeah, like it just kind of was there, and it said this is a fall movie, and it looked like a Studio Ghibli, very heavily inspired by one. If it's not,
Right.
so I'm definitely have to add that to my 1,000 movie list.
Right, right.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, Knives Out to me. I mean, the costuming, the cable knit sweaters.
Yeah,
Yeah, to me it just kind of screams fall. It's here. It's happening.
right.
Um, mhm.
In those movies, you don't think they're fall movies, and then they're on a list, and you're like, oh yeah, those leaves were orange.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that for me, yeah, that, and then maybe also in the same vein, um, just in terms of like spooktacular slash comedy slash fun, but the Clue movie, um, I think
Also on the
always
list. Yeah.
was a good kind of fall kind of vibe to me. So those two kind of in the same vein, right? They're both kind of like these dark black humor, black comedies.
Right.
Um, but yeah, with wonderful casts. Um, Rocky Horror Picture Show, I feel like was criminal that we didn't talk about that. I think that's another one. Um, yeah, The Addams Family. We briefly talked about them, those
Hmm.
movies, but um, yeah, no, that's all I can really think of. But yeah, those movies,
Oh, okay. Yeah. All of those are great movies.
right?
And
Good, solid.
right, yeah. I mean, fall can be anything as long
Sure.
as there's a yellow leaf somewhere and like a dirt road that leads to a warm house. It could be a fall movie.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah. Well, anyways, speaking of things that should fall, our episode should be falling right about now. But
Right.
thank you for joining us, everybody. And Adam, I
Hmm.
mean, next 2 weeks, I think we'll be over the Halloween hump. No, no, I lied. We'll be one day
Just
before Halloween, so I think we should hype it
ooh,
up with a good old classic Halloween movie.
a
No
good old
spoilers.
classic Christmas movie.
Right. Nightmare Before Christmas.
Right, right. No, totally. I definitely think we should, it's got to be. We got to talk about Halloween, right?
Right. Right. So get ready for next week when we talk about Happy Death Day 2. I don't know.
Great movie.
Yes, great movie.
Oh, man.
Anyways, thank you for joining us. Check out our Discord.
Yes.
I've been Mike,
I'm Adam.
and have a great movie day.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Mwah.